A federal judge was driving to her niece's wedding in Birmingham, Alabama. She was dressed like an ordinary woman with no government vehicle and no security detail, just driving her Honda Civic like any regular person. When she neared the small town of Fairfield, she noticed a police roadblock ahead. 3 or 4 police officers were standing on Highway 78, and in the middle stood Sergeant Devin Mitchell, wearing his uniform. He signaled with his hand for the woman to pull over. She pulled her car to the side of the road and parked. In a stern voice, the sergeant asked, "Where are you going, ma'am?" The woman calmly replied, "I'm going to my niece's wedding." Sergeant Mitchell looked her up, and down the woman was a 52-year-old distinguished black woman whose name was Judge Raina Washington. Then laughing, he said, "Oh, and eat and drink at your niece's wedding, huh? But you were speeding through our town, and I don't see your seatbelt on properly. Come on now, you will have to pay a fine, Sergeant." Mitchell began pulling out his citation book. Raina realized what his real intentions were, and that this was just an excuse. She said, "Officer, I haven't broken any traffic laws." "Oh, lady, don't try to teach us the law." He glanced at a deputy standing beside him, then looked back at Raina and said, "We need to teach her some respect." Suddenly, the sergeant grabbed Raina's arm. Roughly too much attitude, huh? When the police say something you are supposed to quietly comply. Raina's arm throbbed from his grip, but she composed herself. Anger was visible in her eyes, but she remained silent. The officer in charge, Sergeant Mitchell, laughed and said, "Still got that attitude in those eyes? I have dealt with plenty like her. Time for a proper lesson." A deputy stepped forward and said, "Sarge, let's take her to the station. We will give her the full treatment there. Then she will learn how to talk to police officers." One deputy grabbed Raina's purse and said, "Come on, get in the patrol car." Raina pulled back and said in a sharp tone, "Don't you dare put your hands on me, or the consequences won't be good." The sergeant grew even angrier. He told a deputy, looked at her with disdain, and said, "Look at that arrogance." Then he stepped forward, grabbed Raina Washington's shoulder, and tried to push her toward the patrol car. Raina cried out, but still she did not reveal her identity. She wanted to see how low they could go. One officer in anger kicked her car door and shouted loudly, acting all high and mighty, "Huh, now we will show you what happens when you disrespect a bad judge." Raina Washington now fully understood what was about to happen to her, and how low these men could truly stoop. There was rage in Sergeant Mitchell's eyes as he shouted, "I have seen many smart ones like you come through Fairfield. You want to challenge the police today? We will show you. Take her to the station. We will teach her." There's still Judge Washington remained silent. She had no intention of revealing her identity. She wanted to see just how far they would go in abusing their authority and how far their corruption would reach. Sergeant Mitchell grew frustrated. Standing before him was a woman who had been grabbed, pushed, and humiliated, whose car had been kicked, yet she still stood with her dignity intact. No screaming, no begging, no surrender. Sergeant Mitchell thought, "Let her get to the station, then I will figure out how to break this stubborn woman." This was not just anger, it was rage boiling. Deep within, the sergeant laughed and said, "Now she is getting quiet. Let us go to the station. We will see how quiet you stay there." As they entered the Fairfield police station, Sergeant Mitchell yelled loudly, "Hey, where's everyone? We got a special guest today who needs an attitude adjustment." Judge Washington still said nothing. She kept looking at the station walls, observing how they treated innocent people who never dared to raise their voice against authority. Then one deputy leaned towards Sergeant Mitchell and whispered, "What is the charge, Sarge?" To that, Sergeant Mitchell casually replied, "Speeding, no seat belt, resisting arrest." "Right, whatever you want. We just need to break her spirit. Don't ask too many questions." Raina was hearing everything, but still did not speak a word. It was as if she wanted the story of this abuse to spill from their mouths themselves. The sergeant sat down at his desk, tapping a pen on the metal surface, then looked up at Raina and asked for her name, her address, and who was going to bail her out. Raina remained silent. The sergeant repeated his demand, asking, "Did you not hear me? What is your name?" Still her silence, still like a stone wall. Then the sergeant slammed his hand on the desk so hard that the sound echoed throughout the entire station, and he shouted in anger, demanding that she tell him her name. Right now, Raina slowly turned her face and replied, "My name is Mrs. Sarah Johnson." The sergeant smirked and said, "Oh, smart lady, huh, you are used to lying to police, but remember, if you get too clever, it will cost you big. One wrong move, and you will not even get time to regret it." Judge Washington was then forcefully thrown into a filthy holding cell where 2 other women were already sitting. One of them looked at her and asked, "Sister, what did they get you for?" Raina gave a faint smile, but said nothing. She was only observing how rotten the entire system had become. If a federal judge could be locked up for no reason, then imagining the condition of regular citizens was not hard at all. Raina now sat in the corner of that dark cell, Watching, listening, and understanding every corrupt act, Sergeant Mitchell then fabricated a false report and ordered charges of disturbing the peace, resisting arrest, and disorderly conduct to be put on her. He slammed his hand on the file and demanded it be processed. Quickly, one deputy hesitated and said, "But, Sarge, we do not have any real evidence of these charges." The sergeant laughed and replied, "In this station, evidence is not brought in, it is manufactured." While later a deputy came in and roughly grabbed Raina's arm just as the sergeant was about to continue his abuse. A commanding voice came from the doorway, asking what is going on here. Everyone turned around. At the door stood Captain Jerome Williams, whose reputation was slightly better than the others in the department. He looked inside, saw the woman's condition, and a frown appeared on his forehead. "What is happening here?" he asked. Mitchell smiled nervously and said, "Nothing, Captain, just some woman from Birmingham acting too smart. We are teaching her some respect." Captain Williams looked at Raina carefully. Her behavior and composure did not seem like those of an ordinary citizen. He asked what the charges. Mitchell grew nervous and replied, "Sir, she was speeding and got hostile during the traffic stop." Williams felt suspicious. He asked Raina, "Ma'am, what is your name?" Raina stayed silent. Mitchell laughed and said, "Captain, she will not even give her real name. She has been lying since we brought her in." Captain Williams now became fully alert. He ordered a deputy to put her in a separate cell and said, "I want to question her myself." Mitchell was surprised, but Captain Williams sternly insisted, "I will handle this personally." On his orders, Raina was moved to another cell even smaller and more isolated than the last. She glanced around and saw a broken bench in one corner, and the smell of desperation hung in the air. Now she was seeing the real face of this corrupt system even more clearly. Every moment she understood better how justice had been reduced to paperwork and power games. Then a deputy came running in and announced, "Captain, there's a convoy of black vehicles